Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's 8:30. We're live from the studios of British Muslim TV here in Wakefield with this week's editions of Questions with me, your host, Mohammed Shafiq. We're broadcasting on Sky Channel 752 and across social media at the handle British Muslim TV. Wherever you are joining us, a very warm welcome. Now, we want you to comment on the big stories we're covering tonight. Call us now on 01924 231 083 or your messages on the WhatsApp number which is on the screen now. And if you're watching us on Facebook, you can post your comment in the chat box and we'll read some of them. We'll read some of them on air. Shortly, we discuss the topics of behind the scenes with charities. As the Charity Commission finished their investigation into the UK-based charity Human Appeal, we talked to Nasir Rafiq about that report and what lessons can the wider sector learn. We then head to Cardiff to talk to Dr. Riyaz Timol of Cardiff University about the survey about understanding British Imams. Really packed show, so we're looking forward to hearing from you tonight. You can call us on 01924 231 083. Your messages on British Muslim TV across social media. Alternatively, you can send us a WhatsApp number, the screen. The WhatsApp number, I always look to the right because the screen in the studio is on the right. But I should really be looking on the left because it's on the left when you're looking. Anyway, there's the number. Am I right? Yes. Alternatively, you can send us that WhatsApp message. The questions we're considering tonight. Does the Human Appeal Charity Commission inquiry damage the wider sector? What do charities need to do to increase confidence and accountabilities? And what do you think of British Imams in the UK? Feel free to share your thoughts now. 01924 231 083. Messages on WhatsApp or post on social media. And we'll read some of your comments throughout the programme. Okay, so let's get started on our first story. Human Appeal is a leading UK-based charity that has been working on international development across the world in some of the most challenging and deprived environments, helping thousands of needy people. In 2017, the Charity Commission opened an investigation after the previous CEO sent a report of a serious incident to the Commission on two issues. That in April 2017, 3 of the charity's trucks carrying flour were stopped in Syria and held for several hours by an armed group. And on the 8th of October 2017, the charity's warehouse in Idlib in Syria was seized by Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, a proscribed terrorist organisation affiliated to Al-Qaeda, according to the United Nations. Now, the Commission had regulatory concerns also that the trustees had taken almost 2 months to report so serious an issue to the Commission. The trustees had not made a report under Section 19 of the Terrorism Act to the appropriate body, as was their legal duty and responsibility. Now, the charity's current CEO is a man called Dr. Mohammed Shafiq. He welcomed the conclusion of the Charity Commission report and said that there were no grounds for further regulatory action involving the charity, which the Charity Commission agreed with. Now, we approached Human Appeal for a response to the Charity Commission report and our programme here tonight on British Muslim TV, but they declined to comment beyond referring British Muslim TV to the statement issued by their CEO, Dr. Ashmawi, on their website, which was published on the 28th of October 2021, which I'll refer throughout this segment. Now, Nasir Rafiq is an experienced accountant. He's an expert in financial governance. He also founded Dua Governance. He has extensive experience of working with charities big and small. He regularly blogs and does TV and radio. I'm really glad he does TV and radio because this is the second time here on my programme. Pleased to say Nasir Rafiq is live on British Muslim TV from the great city of Birmingham. Nasir, assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to the programme.
Assalamu alaikum, man. Thanks for having me.
We've kept it too long, but we've got a full hour tonight, so hopefully it won't be as rushed as it normally is. Now, I set out the reasons in that opening why the Charity Commission commenced that inquiry. Why do you think they did that?
I think it's normal for Charity Commission to act when they feel they need to act. So from the Charity Commission report, they had concerns in December 17, where they opened a compliance case. Then in 2017, from the report, we understand there were some internal investigations. And the outcome of the investigation was such that the Charity Commission in April 2018 announced a statutory inquiry. Now, this is one of the most serious inquiries that the Charity Commission announces and conducts, because it comes with a lot of powers. I mean, some of the powers are such that it can basically, go to the banks directly. It can make legal orders. So it's a very powerful inquiry. And I must say that, the Charity Commission does often announce statutory inquiries when they have a lot of concerns and they want to, dig deep into the charity's affairs. So this is why they announced the inquiry. So it wasn't just the issues that you mentioned earlier. The investigation found some more issues, which basically the Charity Commission wanted to investigate further.
We're going to go into that, but just as setting the scene for our viewers, do you think that the previous CEO of Human Appeal not reporting to the Commission, had that not happened, do you think there would still have been an investigation and on the scale that it happened?
I think it's quite common with charities when something happens, like one incident happens or there's one concern and the Charity Commission comes, opens a compliance case, and what the Charity Commission does, starts asking questions. Okay, why did this happen? Why did this happen? Those questions lead to answers. Those answers lead to other questions. And suddenly, there's a full-blown statutory inquiry. It's not, Human Appeal is not the first charity to have experienced this. There could have been other issues within the charity that could have resulted in the Charity Commission's intervention. So it's not just this one particular issue. There could have been other factors. I mean, we just follow what the Charity Commission report says.
Yeah, but if I'm just trying to get to the point is, Charity Commission is based on getting information from charities or the public. Do you think had the CEO not voluntarily give that information, that issue would have got out?
Reading the Charity Commission report, I don't think it was just that. In 2017,
but that was the instigator. That's what got the ball rolling as such.
All right. Okay. Let me clarify something.
Sure.
It's a legal duty on every charity to submit a significant incident report when there is an incident. So you can't not submit a report. So if something goes wrong in the charity and you're dealing with it, but you still have to inform the Charity Commission as a regulator. So it's a responsibility of the trustees to be, discharging this duty. So informing the Charity Commission when a significant incident happens is a legal duty upon every charity. So your year-end accounts, when you're submitting your year-end accounts, you also have to confirm in your annual return that you have made all the significant incident reports on time. So this is something that no charity could have avoided doing.
Yeah, and it's very detailed. If you read the inquiry, it's a thorough investigation and took quite a longer time. Why do you think it takes the Charity Commission so long to do its reports?
Well, there are a couple of issues. First thing is Charity Commission as a regulator, and this is one thing I've noticed again and again, and not only from this, from other inquiries and other interactions I've had with Charity Commission. There's no doubt Charity Commission in the world is one of the best charity regulators out there. But I feel they don't have enough resources. If you look at the amount of charities, the issues, they have a very thin team, and that basically then sometimes results in them coming back with delays. Second issue is that when you're conducting an investigation, you have to be fair on all parties. So you have to be able to let other people respond. And these things can take time. There may be a decision that Charity Commission takes. There's an appeal to that decision and things carry on. And lastly, what you have to realize is that this was a period when the pandemic happened. Everything, delayed by, times two. And again, the delay, really hurts the charity. I mean, when the investigation started, Human Appeal income was around 44 million. And if you look at the last reported accounts, the income is 19 million. And it was this period, the income halved. So because the Charity Commission website will disclose the fact that you're under inquiry, there'll be a red flag on there. And then, that impacts all sorts of things. And it does really hurt the charity, with these delays. Yeah.
And when you go onto the Charity Commission website, you said it has that red flag. How long does that red flag stay on? Because obviously the investigation is now closed. We can talk about the outcomes after the break. But how long does that red flag stay? Is that a permanent feature or does that drop off after a while?
Yeah, I think once a statutory inquiry is over and the Charity Commission is satisfied, then they basically take that red flag off. Now, when it comes to, for example, accounts, if your accounts are late, that thing will stay with you for a good 4 or 5 years, that red flag. So the red flags for late submission of accounts follow a different rule compared to what the statutory inquiry red flag is.
Okay. Let me ask you one more question, I promise you, and then we'll take a very quick break. We'll come back and get into some of the details of this report. Now, lots of charities would have delayed publishing their accounts because of COVID. Should the public read less into the fact that they're having these delayed accounts rather than lamping accusations at certain charities that they're not being very accountable? They'd just be a bit more compassionate.
First thing is, what your viewers must realize that the Charity Commission rules are that after your year end, it's 10 months. You have to submit your accounts within a 10-month period. Now, if you can't submit your accounts within a 10-month period, there must be something seriously wrong with the way you account and with the way you have your finance systems are. So because within the NGO, INGO sector, especially when you're looking at all these established large charities that get a lot of institutional income, and especially if you're working with DFID, like with the government, they're sometimes required to submit your accounts within 6 months after the year end. So I think 10 months is the latest that you can have. Now, during the COVID time, there were issues where obviously, people were ill, people were not in the office, and the Charity Commission granted extension for that period of pandemic. So there were extensions that were provided at that time, automatic extensions in some instances. But the thing is, what you have to realize is that if you're good at your, if you have the minimum controls in place, then 10 months should be sufficient time for you to submit your accounts.
Yeah, so really interesting point there that it's actually 10 months. So if this year finishes, they've got until October next year to submit the accounts for this current financial year.
That's it. That's it.
And it's, is it calendar year or is it financial year?
Yeah, every charity will have their own.
Okay, so it varies.
It varies from charity to charity. And again,
okay,
submitting
Nasir, just pause there because we're about 20 seconds or so from that break. As I said, we're talking about charities and getting behind the scene, particularly this report into human appeal. We'll be continuing our conversation with our special guest, Nasir Rafiq, who joins us live from Birmingham. Don't go anywhere. We've got a very short break. We'll continue the conversation and maybe take some of your calls. Join us on the other side of this. Welcome back to Questions with me, Mohammed Shafiq, exclusively here on British Muslim TV. We're live from our studios here in Wakefield. We're going to open the lines as well. So if you want to ask a question of Nasir, our expert on charities, and trying to get behind the scenes, particularly on this report on human appeal. We're taking your calls, as I said, on 01924 231 083. You can get in touch with us on social media, the handle British Muslim TV. Nasir is my guest, still my guest. He's live from Birmingham. Now, the trustees claim they met with the executive once a quarter, according to this report. But according to the Charity Commission, they weren't challenging enough of the executive, the CEO, and the people who were employed to run that charity. What do you derive from this part of the report?
I think there's one thing about this whole report is, and this is why I wrote a blog about this report, is there's so many lessons that are relevant to so many charities, especially the larger charities. And I think this is why this point is very, very important, because sometimes what happens is that within the charity sector, there's this impression that as long as there's a report and there are minutes and the trustees were there and they approved, that ticks the box. No, that's not right. When you're a large charity, you have the executive that run the charity. Now, the problem that we have here, sometimes the trustees, they've never experienced a large organizations. They never ran a large organization themselves. So they don't know what a good report looks like. So whenever a report is presented to them, they don't have that experience to assess if this report is a good report. And again, they might have not been in previous experiences where they know how to critically analyze a good report. And therefore, you've got nothing to compare it against. You don't know what questions to ask. And this is what the Charity Commission is talking about, that it's not enough for the management to just present report and the trustees think that the duty has been charged. They must have that ability to be able to recognize if it's an adequate report and if they can challenge it as well. And I think, if you don't have the ability, then, the trustees who have the ability, they need to be trustees. And if you're in a situation where all the trustees lack the ability, then you have to do something about it. You need to have professionals around you that basically can help you, analyze this information. So it's not enough just to have a trustee meeting and to have some nice reports and praise, which often I see in many charities. And this is what the Charity Commission is talking about. And the Charity Commission really focuses on how the trustees conducted themselves. And this is why again and again in the report they use the word misconduct on the trustees. The trustees can't just blame the CEO and just wash their hands. No, they can't.
Yeah. Because the report found misconduct and mismanagement from the trustees. That's clear in this report. But what happens when the executive becomes too strong in charities and the trustees naturally become weaker because they're volunteers?
Very good question. Now, there's one thing your viewers must understand about the executive. There are two positions within the executive that are actually named in Charity Commission regulations that can be disqualified if the Charity Commission finds them to breaching, with serious breach. One is the chief executive, and the second is the finance person. If these two positions are found to have, been, serious misconduct or gross misconduct, the Charity Commission can disqualify these positions. Now, what we find in the Human Appeal report, that the CEO is not singled out for criticism. He's not, the Charity Commission does not use the word gross misconduct for the CEO himself. The misconduct word is used again and again for the trustee. So it's important to understand that although in this, in the Charity Commission regulations, they go heavy on the trustees, but if the executive, especially if the CEO or the finance person is found to have, breached their duty, the Charity Commission has powers to disqualify them forever from the charity sector or for a period of time. And I've seen this happen. And the Charity Commission has used its powers in the past to do that. Now, in terms of the balance between trustees and the executive, look, the thing is, this is not about trustees becoming stronger or the executive becoming stronger. Trustees have a different role, executive have a different role. And I find issues when the trustees don't understand their role and the executive don't understand their role. The trustees start to do the executive role and the executive start to do the trustees role. This is not about who's weak, who's strong. The issue is about each, a role, doing the role that they should not be doing. And I think this is where the ability of the trustees comes in, that they must understand what is expected of them. And especially if you're in a large charity, if the trustees start to run the organization, that's a disaster, because in a large charity, there's a lot of complex risk. The operations are complex. You need able people, full-time people that are paid to do the job. Because,
now, Sorry, go ahead, finish, please.
Okay. So I think it's important that each, person, they identify their role and they stick to that role. And this is where the ability of the trustee, comes into question then.
So I wanted to ask you a follow-up to that was, how can the trustees then hold the executive to account if they delegate that power to them? So that power to account, to report to the Charity Commission, to the safeguarding, all that sort of responsibilities. If you've delegated that to the CEO and the executive, then how do you deal with that?
I get this question a lot, especially from trustees. Especially, what we must realize is that within the Muslim sector, especially, Muslim sector is a very young sector. These charities that we're talking about 20, 30 years ago, they were tiny charities. Some of them didn't even exist. Last 10, 20 years, I've seen these small charities suddenly become large charities. Large charities require a different way of working. Now, I get this a lot because those trustees that set up these charities when they were tiny, now they are trustees when these charities are massive, and they're trying to run those charities when they were when they were small. Now, the issue here is about give and take. If you're giving something to the executive, which is delegating power, there's something you need to take in return, and this is where I feel the trustees sometimes lack the ability, because they've never experienced working in large organizations. They know how to delegate, but how do you take the responsibility back? And that's through the mechanism of assurance. So once you've delegated your responsibility, you need to have systems and processes that basically give you assurance that responsibility is being discharged effectively.
Yeah. So for example, so if you have a safeguarding issue on safeguarding, just generally speaking, that power's gone to the CEO. The CEO then, the trustee should be asking the CEO for regular reports on safeguarding.
Not regular, because this is where the issue is. It's not about the CEO giving reports, but the CEO, it's in CEO's interest to give a report that makes the CEO look good. What you need to do is you need to have parallel systems in place that give you assurance outside the CEO that everything is fine. This is where your internal audit function comes in. This is where your external advisors comes in. These are where your external scrutiny comes in. And if you look at some of the best governed organizations, they are continuously having reviews done. They're continuously having audits done. They're continuously looking at action plans. They're continuously looking at risk. Is the CEO saying this? What are other directors saying? So they've got always mechanisms to measure what the CEO is telling them. So I think what happens within the sector is delegate all responsibilities to the CEO, and then the CEO comes and says everything's fine, and that's sufficient. Yeah. Large charities can't operate like that. You need to have parallel systems that give you assurance that everything is fine, independent from the CEO.
Okay. And then charity officials have to abide by the law, and that means the trustees have to abide by the law. Why do you think the charity CEO at the time waited 2 months to report that serious breaches of the Counter-Terrorism Act 2000?
Okay, there's one thing about the Charity Commission report. The Charity Commission report goes in detail about this, and the Charity Commission report does not say that it was the CEO's responsibility to make this report, and he was wrong to have not made this report. The Charity Commission does not say that. The Charity Commission says the CEO and other executives. Now, in a large charity, you would have a policy on when something goes wrong, what you're supposed to do. And CEO will be there, but if the CEO is not available, there may be other directors that are responsible to make that report. So it's the policy that has to, first of all, you need to have a policy that when something goes wrong, how do you go about, responding to the serious incident?
Like a call tree.
Yeah, and when you're in a large charity, what the trustees are supposed to do is, first of all, they're supposed to have a policy. And then the management the executive are supposed to abide by the policy, but then it doesn't end there. It's the responsibility of the trustees to ensure the policy is followed. So this is where the Charity Commission's report talks about it. It's not sufficient. It's the buck stops with the trustees. It's the trustees' responsibility to make the submission, not the CEO. If the trustees can't say, "Oh, the CEO didn't tell us," because they should have had systems and processes that made it so that they were informed, and then they need to ensure that was. And it's just been like you own a car, you're not the driver, somebody else is the driver, but because you're owner of the car, you have to make sure that the car has insurance, everything's in place. You can't just rely on the driver telling you, because it's your legal responsibility because you own the car. So that's the role of the trustees.
Let me ask you one more question. We've got about 3 minutes before the break, but what does this tell you about the culture in the Human Appeal charity, specifically based on this report at that time?
Well, I can't comment on Human Appeal specifically, and this is for Human Appeal to discuss, and they have a very good response on their website. And what's good about that response is they also list out in detail what are the changes they've brought in, and all those changes are music to my ears, because this is what the whole sector should be doing. And one of the good things about any inquiry is that it helps, and sometimes there's resistance within the Muslim sector, inquiry bad and charity. No, all these things help us to clean our act. They help us make us.
So the charity is developing, improving, getting better.
That's it. That's it. And Human Appeal definitely, as a result, is a better organization. And actually, Charity Commission does make a comment in their report that Human Appeal is a stronger organization as a result of this inquiry.
Because then, so the actual idea of Charity Commission coming in to investigate shouldn't be seen as a bad thing. Actually, it's a good thing, because it allows the charity to develop, to deal with the issues, to strengthen its resolve and its policies and procedures, and then move on to the important work that they are known for doing.
Definitely. Now, my view is that from a faith point of view, we are accountable in the day of judgment for the money that's given to us in charities. If I'm a trustee, right? We should be thankful that the Charity Commission is there that helps us discharge that duty. So Charity Commission is on our side. The role of Charity Commission is to protect the donors and the beneficiaries, and safeguard the assets of the charity. So Charity Commission is a good guy here, and we need to take because at the end of the day, they're independent regulated. So when they say something, it's in our benefit. And I've never come across a investigation that has been unfair. Throughout my professional career in this, some charity commission will be harsh at times, but it will be for the benefit of the charity.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Nasir, I know you stay with us for the next segment as well, so we've got you until 9:30. So we're going to continue the conversation and also give you the response that we got from Human Appeal as well about this inquiry and their future plans. We'll take a very quick break. When we come back, we'll continue the conversation with our special guest, Nasir Rafiq. Join us on the other side of these important messages. Welcome back to Questions with me, Mohammed Shafiq, exclusively here on British Muslim TV. We're live from our studios here in Wakefield. As I said, Nasir Rafiq is my special guest, joining us live from Birmingham, not London. But mind you, some people will argue the whole of the UK is London. Anyway, Nasir, before the break, we talked about the trustees. And you said that they cannot claim ignorance, that the Charity Commission said the same, and that this isn't a defence. What did the Human Appeal report find in relation to those trustees? And what can the sector widely learn from this? What lessons can it learn?
When I wrote my blog on this topic, one of the lessons that I set out from this report was that trustees can't use ignorance as a defense. Yeah. Now, this particular sentence is not used in the Charity Commission's report on Human Appeal, but I have read this sentence in other Charity Commission reports. And if you read the Charity Commission report, they do, talk about this, that it's not enough for the trustees to say, oh, we don't know. Especially when you're in a large charity. You can't get away with saying, oh, we don't know. You have to have mechanisms in place which basically get you to know what's happening. And so those mechanisms cannot be just a CEO. It has to be other, systems and processes as well. Other directors. There could be, for example, like externally, the reviews, internal audits. So there's all sorts of things, tried and tested methods within the charity sector, which are good governance, and those are the things that need to be adopted. And the trustees, they need to make an effort. What you can't do also is to run it, if you're 5 or 6, 7 trustees, what you can't do is just have 2 trustees running the organization. No, it's a collective responsibility. So I think if you read the Charity Commission report on Human Appeal, they do mention about the incident that happened in Syria, that the chair was informed, but the board got to know a month later. And that's like a criticism. That is, you can't have, like a few trustees discharging their responsibility. It has to be collective trustees, and they need to have a mechanism in place that ensures that they are made aware. So now the thing is, this is where the trustees need to basically look at themselves, the organization, and see and compare themselves with other organizations. Sometimes, there's this thing within the Muslim sector, this denial that there may be an issue with us, right? Good governed organizations always compare themselves against good practice and against better governed organizations. And a good or governed organization always is looking for its weaknesses. Whereas an organization that's not well governed, that organization always thinks everything's fine. We've submitted our accounts within 10 months. That means we're the best organization ever. It doesn't work like that. So I think, especially when you're a large organization, you mentioned in your introduction that you're a leading organization, you're a complex operation, you're working in one of the most difficult and remote areas in the world. Your systems, your processes need to match that. Sometimes what happens is that there's a mad rush to raise money and a mad rush to spend money, but the back office operations, the systems and processes don't get that attention. And these systems and processes are at the heart of good governance. And for me, the key learning lesson from the Human Appeal report was just that you can't undermine those systems and processes, because these are vital to ensuring that the trustees are able to discharge their duties effectively.
And so that, in this report, it talks about the due diligence that Human Appeal trustees didn't do. And they said they had delegated that to the executive and the staff. But the reality is if they don't know how to do that, they should get some professional help, somebody like you coming in, consultants to come in to teach them what the process is and how you elevate that. We're talking about the trustees there, but also what's the responsibility of the CEO and the executive to make sure that they understand their reporting structure and how they let the collectively as a body, trustees body, know?
Yeah, a couple of things here. The first thing here, the due diligence point was very interesting for me, and I wrote this in my blog, is that normally, if you're a big organization, you can't expect the trustees to be doing due diligence because they're not experts, they haven't got time, and they've delegated that responsibility to the executive and to management. But the Charity Commission criticized Human Appeal trustees on this. Why? Is because, again, coming back to that point that you need to have systems and processes that assure yourself that the due diligence is being done. Because at the heart of safeguarding is being able to do due diligence. If you haven't done your due diligence, then there's a huge risk to the organization. It's such a massive risk that you need to make sure that somebody independently is telling the trustees that due diligence is being done. And whenever,
independent, sorry, just get this right. Independent from the executive?
Yeah, from the decision from management.
Yeah,
so within management, you can have an internal audit function. They're not part of operations. So independent from operations.
Okay.
They tell you that due diligence is being done. And again, as part of your reporting, if you're going into a contract, with a big organization, first of all, the trustees should be, aware that we're dealing with this big contract or big donor or a big partner. And the trustees in their questioning should be satisfied that we've done all the due diligence. And the executive should be assuring the trustees on that the due diligence has taken place. So that was quite interesting, observation for me, in the Human Appeal report.
Yeah. So and the report was very clear that the Human Appeal trustees were found to have failed in their legal responsibility as a trustee. Do you think that's a fair reflection and criticism of the trustees?
I don't think that's a fair reflection, because if there was gross misconduct on behalf of the trustees or something really, really seriously wrong, then obviously the Charity Commission has powers to disqualify people or even remove all the trustees and become interim managers of the charity itself and start running the charity directly. But the Charity Commission didn't do that. Charity Commission was satisfied with the actions that their trustees had put in place, and they are happy to monitor those actions. So although there was misconduct and mismanagement by the trustees, and this is mentioned again and again in the report, there was no gross misconduct on behalf of the CEO. The Charity Commission report concluded by saying Human Appeal is a strong organization. There's one thing that I want to read out. Steve Roke, head of compliance visits and inspections at the Charity Commission, said in his report, said in the press release of the report, that while trustees of larger charities would delegate certain tasks to staff members, we and the law are clear that trustees remain ultimate responsibility for running their charity, and our guidance is clear. The trustees must ensure that robust reporting procedures are in place. Responsibility for ensuring they have sufficient information and are adequately informed to make decisions rests with the charity trustees. Now, coming back to your question about CEO, that clears the lines. Now, this is where the responsibility of the trustees start from ensuring that they have a competent CEO in place. And the competence of the CEO should be in the context of the charity itself. What are the risks of the charity? What are the operations of the charity? What are the issues in the charities? In that context, the CEO should be selected. It shouldn't be, and it should be selected by looking at the market, who's the best person. Sometimes within the Muslim sector, the appointments are made at CEO level. Sometimes they're not competitive. Sometimes, for example, the appointments are made do not reflect the nature of the charity itself. So, for example, you've become a CEO of a charity, but you never was a CEO of a large organization of that size. Obviously, when you come in, you don't know how good practice looks like. So this is where the responsibility of the trustee comes in. You should get this.
Can I just ask you on that, because I think that's a really important point that you make. But the trustees in the end are volunteers. I know their legal responsibility, but is it fair to have so much responsibility on them and not on the executive and the management team, who are being paid in some cases huge amounts of salary.
Yeah. First of all, if you can't take the heat, then you shouldn't be in the kitchen. Now, if you've become a trustee, meaning you're trusted with, managing, owning that charity and legal responsibility of that charity, then you should be able to discharge those duties. You should be understanding those duties. You shouldn't be a token trustee. So first of all, being a trustee, you have to, understand what it means being a trustee. Second thing is, it's about trustees have their own role and the management have their own role. It's the trustees need to understand what their role is. The management are paid against what's expected of them. And that payment is market rates. So, if you're going to basically start compromising on salaries, then you might not get the right staff to manage the risks that you're managing. Like, you look at local councils, the chief exec salaries of local councils, you're collecting bins, there may be, with international charities, massive safeguarding issues. Look at the salaries of chief executives and executives compared to local government. So I think the task at hand is huge. You need to have the right people running it. What you shouldn't be doing is compromising on quality, compromising on ability. This is where the role of trustee then comes in. They need to make sure they get the right driver for the car that they're responsible for, that can take that person then is able to develop the systems and processes that are needed for the trustees to be able to for them to discharge their duties. And
then the trustees or the management respecting and understanding the job of trustees and making sure that they're equipped with everything that they need.
There's a hadith of Prophet ﷺ that a mu'min is a mirror of another mu'min. And when I read this hadith, it reminds me of the relationship between CEOs and trustees. The CEOs should be using the trustees as their mirror. Why would you need a mirror? You need a mirror to check if everything's fine. If you're, you don't need to improve anything anywhere on your face, in your clothes. This is what the role of trustees is. The CEO, it's not a competition where, boss and your employee. No, the trustee forum should be used by the CEOs to ensure they're on track. And they should be, touch basing with the trustees on that basis. So any criticism, any question from the trustees, it should be welcoming, because that basically helps them to ensure they're managing the risks properly. So the relation between the trustees and the CEO sometimes gets fractured, because the management might be thinking, who are they to ask me questions? The trustees may be thinking, oh, we're paying him a salary and he should do everything that we're telling him to do. It shouldn't be like that. Look,
it's a partnership. Would you argue it's a partnership?
Exactly, because look, this is about donors and beneficiaries, and the trustees have their role and the management have their role to fulfill what the donors want them to do and what the beneficiaries require from them. So it's about them. It's not about trustees and about management.
Yeah.
So this is why sometimes issues happen. Okay. They forget the big picture, and becomes about personalities, and then lack of experience and plays in from both parts.
Pause there, my friend. Nasir, you are a fascinating discussion about this. We'll take a very quick break. When we come back, we'll carry on the conversation. Don't go anywhere. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to Questions with me, Mohammed Shafiq, exclusively here on British Muslim TV. My special guest is Nasir Rafiq, and we're getting lots of comments on social media. Let's get through a couple of them, if I may, before we move back to our questions. Yasser from Birmingham asks, how do you know which charity to choose and trust to give money after all this event, everything that's happened with not just Human Appeal, but obviously this is program is about that report, but there have been other reports into other charities that have also raised concern amongst the donors?
Yeah, I think, first of all, I think sometimes the issues with charities are exaggerated, within the Muslim sector, that everybody's on it. And, look, there are issues, but what we must understand that we have a regulator in place and we have some really strict rules. I haven't seen a Muslim charity that hasn't been visited by the Charity Commission. and the Charity Commission takes its duties very seriously. All charities that have income above £1 million, they have to be audited. The standard of audit in UK is very good. So I don't think there's a like a massive scandal happening within the charity sector where you can't trust anybody. That's not true. And I would never support that. And I'm somebody who basically is always looking at the things that will go wrong. So and I myself donate to a large number of charities. So there's no issue that I would find there. So what I would ask donors is to question a bit more. Every charity spends huge significant amount on marketing and fundraising to attract donors. Now, there is donors' right to ask them the questions to satisfy themselves. And the charities, especially the fundraisers, they work very, very hard, in order to, satisfy the donors, and they go beyond the call of duty at times. And I really, praise them for that. And I was reading Quran, and there are Quranic verses which actually encourage you to basically encourage others to give charity. So they fulfill the role in Quran. And again, for a donor, you're basically rewarded for your intentions. So once you donate to charity, it becomes a responsibility of the charity to fulfill its responsibilities.
So I just wanted to ask you one more question that's coming through that I think is relevant. When the CEO thinks he's the big fish, he created this charity, as you said, the tussle between the trustees and the sort of CEO. And that seems to be a pattern within the Muslim charity sector, isn't it?
I don't think it's a pattern, but I mean, there's one thing about the Human Appeal report, which is, very valuable for me as a lesson, that the buck stops with the trustees. A CEO could be whoever, whatever power, the legal responsibility sets with the trustees. When things go wrong, the Charity Commission will go to the trustees first. CEO will have, his or her day, and the Charity Commission will look at that, but the buck stops with the trustees. And it's important that the trustees fulfill their responsibilities. In some organizations, it may be that the CEO is at the forefront and fulfilling his or her duties, and may seem to be a strong CEO. That's fine, but the responsibility of CEO is different from the trustees.
Yeah,
the trustees don't have to be in the limelight, for everything.
Yeah, and then one more question on this. Now, the Charity Commission report into Human Appeal said that Human Appeal was fined in Greece and had to pay over £40,000 as well as a £13,000 fine, I think it was, to resolve this unpaid tax accusation. How do you respond to this when people look at that huge amount of money, which is from the public, giving it, being used to pay legal costs?
Actually, there's a bigger issue here, and it's not just specific to Human Appeal. I've seen this many times where, because suddenly an emergency happens, like and emergency happens, and you want to do an appeal, and you want your boots on the ground, and you want to be seen delivering a project, you don't care about the banking system. You just take cash. Now, the thing is, this happens again and again. And what we found here is, and what the Charity Commission is saying, is that you have to use the banking routes. It's not enough to just take cash there. How are you registered in that country? Do you have license to operate in that country? If you're a responsible charity, you have to make sure all those boxes are ticked before you actually go and deliver programs. Are you working with a partner? Sometimes what happens in the mad rush of raising money, you want to show a presence in that country, and you completely bypass the local laws and regulations, thinking you're doing a service to mankind. And this is, no, look, the thing is, it's not about delivering aid. You need to be able to deliver aid as per, the proper processes. And this is where the systems and processes come in, that look, once you, decide that you're going to spend money somewhere, you have to make sure that the minimum is ticked off. The local laws are satisfied. You're not taking risks, because look, this is not your money. If it was your money, go ahead and do what you're doing and be fine. This is the donor's money. And there's a certain responsibility that the trustees and management have to take before you go ahead and start spending that money.
Okay. And then let's be absolutely clear here. There has been no evidence or even allegation of any involvement of Human Appeal in terrorism or money laundering or financial mismanagement against anybody in the charity. And that's very much clear in that report, isn't it not? Nasir?
As I mentioned, the report ends by saying that Human Appeal is a stronger organization. And it does say that there are still areas of improvement. I mean, in my view, those areas of improvement will relate to their financial statements, because last 3 years of accounts have been qualified and not submitted on time. And as a financial governance expert, for me that is worrying, and I expect that they would have action plans in place to sort that out.
Yeah. And why do you think Muslim charities attract so much attention?
Look, the thing is, it's highly charged, emotional. Fundraisers use Quran, Sunnah to raise money. There's a lot of and again, when donors are paying, they're paying, they're paying because of sadaqah. So what is sadaqah? It's a worship. It's a dua.
Yeah.
They may be paying because of a memory of a loved one or somebody's hard-earned cash. So there is a lot of emotion attached to the money that is given. And then when charities are not able to, and there's one thing about the Muslim sector, they're very, very good at marketing projects, but they're not very good at marketing the systems and processes they have. And if you look at the non-Muslim sector, you look at Oxfam, you look at Save the Children, other charities, you look at their accounts, they spend a lot of energy and a lot of text in their accounts to explain the systems and processes they have. Because, and Muslim charities, a lot of them, because of Charity Commission involvement and because of various other reasons, they have good systems in place. But they don't market those systems as much they should do, to tell the donors how they make sure the money is safe. It's all about emotional fundraising, showing somebody in a desperate need in a field office, and raising money against that. Look, it should be also about, how you make sure the money is safe, spent properly, and sometimes, the fundraisers lack that ability.
And really not just about international development charities here, but generally the charity sector, whether it's a mosque, Islamic center, the fact that the trustees and the people who run these charities shouldn't be afraid of public accountability. They should embrace that, should they not?
Look, this is from our, own faith. Hazrat Umar is another example where, the Umar, he gets up, right, and, is about to make a speech, and somebody says, wait a minute, everybody got one piece of cloth. How come you got two, right? And look at Hazrat Abu Bakr, the way he, did his annual accountability of his governors, and one of the governors resigned over it. He goes, no, I want to be accountable to God only once, not twice, with you as well. So I think accountability and transparency, this is at the heart of our religion. And this is what really disturbs me, that when we use religion to raise money, that's fine. We're using religion to raise money, but we don't use religion on how we run the organizations. Religion is as relevant there as well. How we treat our employees, how we basically manage our finances, how we basically, ensure that we got the right systems and processes in place.
Let me ask you one final question. What lesson can we learn? All the charities who are watching this program, what can they learn from this particular report?
The lesson that we learn for me is to take these recommendations seriously. I wrote a blog, is duathoughts.com, to talk about this. And the reason why I talk about it, because sometimes reports happen, a press release happens, everybody forgets. There's no forum within the Muslim charity sector that basically would talk about this. It's all about raising money, right, and defending charities. Wait a minute, it's not about defending charities. Okay. It's about ensuring that charities become better organizations. They won't become better organizations if you're not going to talk about it, if you're going to just start brushing things under the carpet and not take this on. And I commend BMTV for taking this topic and talking about it. And because look, what's the end result? The end result is everybody becomes a better charity. A positive discussion starts. It's not about having a go at anybody. This is about learning the lessons and becoming a better organization so we can do more for our donors and our beneficiaries.
Well, I absolutely love our discussion. Thank you so much. And I hope the charities that are watching this will be able to take what you've said. Thank you so much. As always, Nasir Rafiq, look forward to welcoming you back on the program. That was Nasir Rafiq joining us live from Birmingham. As I said, we asked Human Appeal for a full response to our questions about this program. They declined to comment, but referred us to their statement from their new CEO on their website. Now, Human Appeal CEO Dr. Mohammed Ashmawi said, and I quote, "We welcome the Charity Commission's conclusion of the statutory inquiry and its decision that there are no grounds for further regulatory action involving the charity. Human Appeal has been transformed by the fundamental changes that we have implemented over the last 3 years, with the full support of the current chair, who commissioned the original independent inquiry and proactively alerted the Charity Commission in the weeks after his appointment in 2017. Several issues raised in the Commission's report were already being addressed when the inquiry launched. We have subsequently addressed other issues and ensured continued attention for issues which demand an ongoing focus. Beyond this, we have fostered a culture of zero tolerance for breaches of our policies and strive for continuous improvement in all that we do. However, we welcome both the guidance that the Commission has provided and its acknowledgement of the significant improvements and transformation in governance, monitoring and evaluation of the executive leader's performance that have put the charity on a firmer footing. We also welcome its public recognition of improvements in Human Appeals management and controls, and that all the charity funds are accounted for. And as I said, there is no allegation or evidence of ever being involved in financial mismanagement, and obviously they have changed the culture in this organisation. So we salute you, Human Appeal. Thank you so much for sharing that statement with us, so we were able to give it to our viewers. When we come back after the break, we head to Cardiff University and talk to Dr. Riyaz Timol on British Imams and their contribution to the UK and that very important survey that you could be involved in. Don't go anywhere. Join us on the other side of these very important messages. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alaikum, welcome back to Questions with me, Mohammed Shafiq. Now let's move on to our final story. British Muslims have been part of this country's diversity since the late 1950s. And that very first generation of Muslims helped build a mosque, arranged for Imams to join the UK to preach and lead the community, and in essence helped us establish the British Muslim community that we see today, that we partake in and that we celebrate. Now, understanding British Imams is what is often forgotten. Cardiff University's Islam UK Centre is conducting a survey on British Imams, which is the largest project of its kind in the UK. Dr. Riyaz Timol is part of the team at Cardiff University who is leading on this survey, and I'm pleased to say he's joining us live from the city of Preston, just up the road here from Yorkshire. Dr. Riyaz, assalamu alaikum, and a very warm welcome to the programme, sir.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Lovely to be here. Thank you
so much. First of all, let me ask you that question. What is your views on the role of Imams in this country?
I think the role of Imams, well, intrinsically within the word itself, obviously Imam is an Arabic word which means leader. It's often translated as a leader, but it's linguistically connected to the word amama, which means to be in front. And so it indicates the role of the Imam as somebody who stands in front of the congregation and leads the prayers. It's also connected linguistically to the word which is mother. And so there's a nurturing element there. In the same way that a mother nurtures a child or is kind of responsible for the upbringing of her offspring to a certain extent. Similarly, the Imam is responsible for nurturing the congregation or shepherding the flock, both intellectually and spiritually. So that's kind of an examination of the linguistic connections of the word Imam. But I think in the minority context of the UK, in which British Muslims have been part of the tapestry of the wider society for upwards of 50, 60, 70 years now, since the Second World War, the role of the Imam is evolving and adapting to reflect the changing circumstances. And so beyond kind of just leading prayers and educating children, there's also interfaith activism, there's pastoral elements, there's counseling and mental health care, there's bereavement and end-of-life care for congregants. There's a whole plethora of issues which we've been examining as part of this research project at Cardiff University. It's actually a 3-year research project.
Wow.
We're in the final year, so we've conducted a huge amount of research on all of these topics.
And when I talk about that early generation, the ones that came here in the 50s and the 60s, what do you learn from them, from that generation, about their service and their contribution to the British Muslim community?
I think it's very easy to dismiss their contribution and kind of see them as retrograde or backwards. But I think that would actually be doing a disservice to the work which they did, the tremendous hard work which they're putting in establishing a community infrastructure and establishing the mosques and the institutions which often house the imams. So I think the work of the first generation is something they were effectively planting seeds, and those seeds have come to fruition over the subsequent decades. And British Muslims today are often benefiting from the efforts and the hard work of the earlier generations.
And imams and scholars often get a bad press. They're often criticized. If it's not criticized for the teaching that they do, the sermons that they do, the length of the du'as sometimes get criticized. They get criticized for any public comments that they make. What do you make of that criticism and that sense of being public and having to be held to account?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on what the criticisms are. I think in every group of people, there's always good and bad. There's always good apples and bad apples. And similarly, within the kind of corpus of the group of imams, there's going to be huge internal diversity. So it's difficult to kind of tar everybody with the same brush. And so some criticisms may be legitimate when directed towards certain individuals, but similarly, it'll be difficult, or it's kind of not fair to broaden that out and apply it to the whole group, in the same way that we don't agree with stereotyping all Muslims as being of a certain kind because of the actions of a minority. Similarly, I think we should do the same with imams. So it really depends on what the criticisms are. And and I think it's important to be kind of fair in assessing the work of imams.
Yeah. And do you think that imams do that self-reflection as well about their role and the responsibility that's on their shoulders? Because, as you said, there are imams, there are leaders, we pray behind them, but also that at times a minority of them do bring the community into disrepute.
I mean, one of the unique things that we've done as part of this research project is we've conducted an unprecedented amount of research. We've conducted 40 interviews with imams around the country of all different backgrounds and schools of thought. And so when we've had these conversations with imams, we've documented their lived experiences. And as part of this, introspection and personal self-development have been often essential to their own journey. So when a young imam graduates from the seminary, often from if they're part of the South Asian tradition, it's what's called the Darul Ulum. When they graduate from the seminary, they have relatively little life experience and they're thrust into the public limelight. But then as they learn the ropes and they begin, so the first time kind of facing that congregation, standing on a pulpit can be quite daunting. But then as the years develop and the years become decades and their experience, as with any other kind of professional role, inevitably they grow inside the role and they develop competencies and proficiencies. But often what happens is they become very self-aware of their personal areas of improvement. And many imams that we've spoken to, it could be public speaking, it could be kind of proficiency in the English language, it could be more scriptural knowledge of particular fiqh issues, which people in the congregation are come to them if they get questioned about evolution or postmodernism, which many young Muslims are thinking about, and they come to the imam as the first port of call, then the imam may often need to go away and do some homework or reading on this in order to come back on this. So I think imams are very good at kind of self-identifying areas of improvement and then actually plugging away at that behind the scenes.
So just tell us, our viewers, why the need for a survey and what you're hoping to achieve by the end of this research project?
Yeah, there's actually two surveys. The first one is completed, and that was done on British imams themselves. So the objective of that one was to document basic biographical details about the British imamate, if we can call it that. So that kind of national picture of British imams. How many are born in this country? What are the ethnic origins of imams? What's the average age profile of an imam? What language does the imam speak when he faces the congregation? For the first time, we've got an empirical data set because more than 2,000 imams responded to this survey. So on a national level, for this first time, we can actually sketch a profile of the British imamate. That was the first survey which we did in the first year. The second survey, which we've just launched and which we'd encourage all of the viewers to go online. If you just search for Cardiff University British Imams and you find the kind of project, and you'll see that complete our community survey. This is different from the first survey because this is focusing on the British Muslim community at large. So any British Muslim, whether male or female, from all kinds of backgrounds and denominational affiliations, we are encouraging you to share your experiences of interacting with your imams. And very often some of the questions are hypothetical, such as how much should an imam be paid? What are the most important, what's the best thing you like about your imam? Can you give an example of when the imam has made a positive difference in your life? If it's a British Muslim woman, then we ask questions such as, how well do you think that the imam caters for women's needs in your community? We've got other questions such as, do you think that the role of the imam should be fixed in terms of the hours from 9 to 5, or should they be on call to serve the needs of their congregation? How important is it for your imam to represent you to the wider society, etc.? There's lots of questions, but we want people in the community to come on board and to share their views on all of these issues. Have you ever approached an imam for help or guidance? If so, what was your experience? And we want to uncover the good and the bad. So again, we're just documenting the issues, and we've got an empirical evidence base on which we can actually make suggestions to the community about how best to improve the relationship of the imam with the community.
Because let's be honest, you know, I'm friends with lots of imams, and due to my job, I get to spend some time with them. Lots of them are paid peanuts. You know, some cases less than the national minimum wage, which is a criminal offence, but that's a different debate to have. If we pay that sort of money to these imams, sorry, Dr. Timol, then we can't expect creme de la creme, can we?
I think you've hit upon a very important point and I think one of the major findings of our project is going to be we're uncovering and documenting the working conditions of imams around the country. As I said, we've interviewed 40 imams, and I think in this country, because the Muslim community is a minority in a non-Muslim majority, unlike countries such as Turkey, for example, which has a Diyanat system, or other Muslim majority countries in which there's state support for the imams. Here, it's down to the individual mosque management committee and the community to fund the role of imams. And because of that, there's a huge amount of disparity in the way in which imams are treated in different communities. So imams in Glasgow could be treated very different to imams in Bradford, which is very different to the situation in Birmingham. A lot of it can boil down to the kind of ethnic origins of the community. And so one of the things that one of the trends that we've uncovered is that imams are generally, if I was to summarize it in a single strapline, it would be that they are overworked and underpaid, and often they're underappreciated and undervalued for their work as well. And so I think that's really something which the community should do better on in valuing the imams. And
sorry, I get a sense. Yeah, sorry, I'm interrupting you, because actually I get a sense that if we, want somebody to pray our janazah, family members, we want the nikah, we want somebody to pray for a deceased, for khatam or something like that. You know, we need some religious advice. We go to these people, yet we don't respect them enough to pay them a decent wage.
Absolutely. I mean, and I think it's one of this is something personal, which I feel it's one of the crimes or the tragedies of our community. And it doesn't reflect well on us that we treat our religious, because in the Islamic tradition, there's a hadith that the ulama are the warathatul anbiya, the inheritors of the prophets. And so we should honor them. And often we do expect them to drop everything at the drop of a hat and to come and kind of provide social or community needs. But equally, we're not willing to remunerate them adequately. And some of the interviews that we've done have actually uncovered horror stories, unfortunately, in which, there was one imam who told me that he said, I've never been able to buy new clothes for my children. I mean, all my children were raised on secondhand clothing. And that's because I simply didn't have enough money to make ends meet. And there's other imams who, there was actually a pay-as-you-go imam, which I found very interesting in an interview. So he was effectively paid £8 for each prayer that he led. And if he gave a talk after the prayer, he'd get an extra £8. So because it's an unregulated sector, it's down to the individual mosque and imam to work up their own working conditions.
Yeah. Okay, sorry to interrupt you, Dr. Riyaz, Timol. Really fascinating discussion. We're going to take a very quick break. We'll carry on our final break. We'll carry on the conversation with Dr. Riyaz just after this Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to Questions with me, Mohammed Shafiq. My special guest is Dr. Riyaz Timol from Cardiff University, who's doing this project, this 3-year project. I know we're going to open the lines and take some of your calls. I keep saying that every week, and sometimes I don't end up taking calls. So if you want to call us, please do 01924 231 083. What do you, Dr. Timol, what do you make of those imams who don't speak English? We've seen a significant change both in the Braillevi community, the Jubandi community as well, where English produced imams are now very much active than they were, say, 10, 15 years ago.
I think this is seen to be one of the pressing needs of our community. And rather than it being imposed on us from outside, I think organically we've seen that British Muslim communities have recognized this as a need to develop English-speaking imams who are trained in British seminaries, British Darul Ulooms, both of the Deobandi and the Barelvi kind of persuasions from the South Asian community, but also from kind of Azhar or from Medina University, from different kind of affiliations. And so what we've tended to find is that most mosques in the country, especially the larger mosques, employ at least 2 imams, if not 3 or 4, one of whom is elder and speaks predominantly in Urdu to service the needs of the elder generation who are still there. So it's an important part of the congregation, those elders, and it's important that the imam does speak a language which they can relate to and a cultural idiom which is accessible to them. At the same time, there is the British-born generation, and then there's increasing ethnic diversity in British Muslim communities. So that South Asian dominance is now slowly diluting and fading. And especially if you go to places like London, which are considered to be cities of hyperdiversity, and even Birmingham now, there's increasing amounts of Somali communities, Kurdish communities, Turkish communities. And so English is becoming the dominant lingua franca that connects all of these multiple ethnicities in the context of pluralistic modern Britain.
Yeah. And now there's been a conversation, not just here in the UK, but France as well, where the Macron government, to deal with extremism and terrorism, has said we want to register, and the state could control the system in terms of monitoring imams and what's going on in their public roles. Is that something that we could do here in the UK, or is that something which you oppose?
I mean, I think it's a double-edged sword when state interference in Muslim community affairs. I think in France, what we're witnessing is a type of aggressive secularism in which the role of the imam is seen to be something which the government can co-opt in order to push a particular brand of Islam, which they want to popularize among the masses. And I think inevitably that's going to provoke reaction and resistance from within the Muslim community. I think the extent to which, very often the role of the imam is like, there's the famous hadith, أعظم جهاد كلمة الحق عند سلطان جائر. The best form of jihad is to speak the truth in the face of an unjust tyrant. And so very often the role of the imam, and especially if you go back in history to Imam Ahmed ibn Hanbal, for example, or the great kind of imams of fiqh, then they spoke the truth. They spoke truth to power, and that gave them a legitimacy and a credibility among the masses. So I think if the imams become too cozy with the government, or if we allow the governments to kind of construct a narrative of British Islam or French Islam, which is amenable to secular sensibilities, they'll lose credibility and legitimacy within the community. At the same time, though, I think there are benefits to having a regulated sector. In other words, a lot of these issues of professionalization and the kind of wage of imams, a lot of these can be addressed simply by having standardized templates in place. And often organizations like the Charity Commission can leverage soft power in communities to try and standardize things and to raise the working conditions of imams. So it's a double-edged sword. I don't think we should dismiss the government out of hand. At the same time, the government, we don't want officials in Whitehall telling us how to be good Muslims.
Yeah, and you talked about that sense of accountability. We've tried, the MCB's tried this, Minab, Qari Imam Asim, who's my guest next week, has tried this as well. But there isn't a central body to deal with the complaints of abuse, sexual assault, there could be fraud, serious allegations against imams. What do we do as a community need to do to increase that confidence and strength in the complaint process?
That's a really good point, because we do have these umbrella representative organisations such as the MCB, MINAB, Faith Associates, the BBSI more recently, and all of them are doing important roles and functions, but there isn't anything specific for Imams, as in people who lead prayers in British masajid. And potentially one of the outputs of our project, because I'm very keen that the findings of our project are not locked away in the ivory towers of academia, but that they have a real meaningful impact at the grassroots of British Muslim communities. And one of the ways we could potentially do that is by developing something like the Union of British Imams, in which Imams up and down the country of all different backgrounds. So it's not just for Deobandis or Barelvis, but everyone who's an Imam should come on board for the common good. And they can share best practices. So very often the type of issues that Imams deal with are common. And so if someone's facing a suicidal congregant, for example, they could tap into this wealth of resources and experience of other Imams who'd be able to help them. At the same time, this could be somewhere that Imams could go to for help or advice. I mean, one of the questions that we asked Imams in our interviews, which was quite interesting actually, was many people in the community come to you for help and guidance. Who do you go to for help and guidance? Yeah. And so Imams are human beings as well, and they have their own shortcomings and their own failings and their own weaknesses. And they often have spiritual mentors or guides who they go to kind of replenish their spiritual petrol tank and to keep going. Yeah. And so a kind of union of British Imams might be an idea where Imams can come together and to brainstorm a lot of the issues that they commonly face.
But that aspect of investigation, the sense that, yes, obviously, if somebody's committing a criminal offence, you would want them to report that to the police and let the police investigate that. But that sense of allegations of misconduct, there isn't a disciplinary process. Yes, each Imam is employed by a mosque and they have their own individual policies, but collectively as a community, we don't have that, say, like the Roman Catholic Church or the Church of England or the Jewish community.
Yeah, so I think this is all part of our story and our narrative. As a British Muslim community in this country, as we mature and as we establish, I mean, we've already got firm foundations, but as these foundations begin to flourish, then I think we'll slowly see these institutional mechanisms begin to emerge. And we'll develop more sophisticated infrastructures in our communities. And I think this would be one of the ways in which there's a kind of sense of, there's a source of recourse where people can go to if they've got issues or problems or even allegations with Muslim religious professionals, because Imams are basically part of a broader category of Muslim religious professionals. So I think that's something which we will see organically develop as time goes on.
So you said there's another year to go, so people can, watching this, who want to contribute to your survey. How can they find that survey?
I mean, we have an animated video which kind of explains what the survey is about, and it'd be very nice if you could tweet that for your followers.
I will, promise you.
Thank you. And I mean, if you just search, if you go on Cardiff University, British Imams, Understanding British Imams is the name of the project. So if you Google that, it should take you to the project website. There's much more information about who's involved in the project, what the project involves, and also you'll find a link to the survey. And any British Muslim of any kind of background and walks of life can get involved by simply clicking the link and completing the survey. And we'd love you to do that, because the more people, the findings will only be as good as the data, and the data has to come from you, the viewers, the people who are watching this. So we need you to come on board. Many people think it's not for me. I don't really know my Imam. I don't go to the mosque very often, so I don't consider myself to be practicing. That's absolutely fine. We want to cover the entire spectrum of diversity within the British Muslim community, including the people who are quote unquote unmosqued. So, everybody feel free and welcome to go on board and complete this survey.
And then this is year 3 of this project. When do we expect to see the data and the report as a result of your survey?
This is the third and final element of data capture, this survey which we've got. The 40 interviews have been concluded and completed. All of them have been meticulously transcribed, and we're in the process of analysing them. In doing so, we're kind of identifying patterns in terms of what Imams are telling us. And the first survey which we did, we're also in the process of analysing that data. So that survey is closed and that data set is completed. So we were delighted that more than 1,200 British mosques responded to that survey. And because many mosques employ more than one imam, we've got data for more than 2,000 individual imams. So that's the largest data set that's ever been generated on British imams. So those two elements of data capture are complete and in the process of analysis. The third one is currently live, which is the survey which I'm inviting everyone to do. Once we've completed this survey, which will be in the first week of December, then the next year will be full throttle. We'll be doing analysis and write-up. And we're hoping to publish a book, an academic monograph on British imams, and also to have a number of community-oriented reports and findings, which are kind of aimed. So for example, we could have a handbook of best practice for mosque management committees about how to get the best out of your imams. We've interviewed 40 imams. These are the issues that they're telling us about. We could have a handbook of best practice for imam training institutions like the Darul Ulooms about how best to prepare your students for imamate in the 21st century. So these are potential community-oriented outputs that we could produce. We could have a report for faith leaders of different communities, such as Christian priests and Jewish rabbis, so they can understand the figure of the British imam better.
Because that's something which I think we don't do as a community. We look at the establishment of the Church of England, the Jewish community, the Catholic Church, the way they structure their institutions of faith. There's no harm in trying to find that out and trying to learn some best practice and implement that in the Muslim community. Is that a fair reflection?
I think so, absolutely. But I think the fact that Christianity has been part of the historical tapestry of this country for centuries, so inevitably their institutional infrastructures are far better established than Muslim communities, which by and large have been immigrant communities who are still kind of finding our feet to some extent. It's taken as, we're a much younger community, which is why ethnographic research, academic research on the figure of the British imam, this is the first time it's being done, whereas the figure of the parish priest or the Jewish rabbi has been done in the past. Nevertheless, as part of the Abrahamic family of faiths, we do have this kind of precedence, and we are part of the story. So imams are part of the fabric of religious leadership in this country.
Dr. Timol, thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to welcoming you back in a future show when we get the data. Thank you so much there, Dr. Riyaz Timol, for joining us live from Preston. Thank you so much to our guests. Thank you to the team behind the scenes for making it a fantastic show. I'll see you same time next week at 8:30. Take care of yourself and each other. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.